The air in the Stratica consulting offices on the 40th floor always smelled like money. Not the crisp, new bill kind, but the stale, recycled variety that overbrewed premium coffee, lemon-scented disinfectant wipes on ergonomic desks, and the cloying mix of a dozen different department store perfumes worn by people trying way too hard. I, Maya Chen, found it all unbearably generic. My own scent, a ghost of amber, vetiver, and something faintly smoky that clung to my wool blazer, was my only defense. It was my secret armor. They just didn't know it yet. My victory that morning, a flawless 80-page market penetration analysis for Viridian Tech that had the client's CFO actually smiling on a Zoom call that was met with the usual silence. No congratulatory email from Brad, my director. No shout-out in the team Slack channel. Just the soft, accusing blink of my inbox, already filling with new requests. I was used to it. In the 2 years since I'd traded a lab in Gross for a cubicle in Manhattan, I'd learned that excellence, when performed quietly by someone who skipped the $20 artisanal salad runs and the mandatory happy hours at overpriced rooftop bars, was treated as a mild social offense. My crime wasn't incompetence. It was a refusal to play the game. I didn't laugh at Brad's unfunny jokes. I didn't compliment Jessica on her new, alarmingly tight Diane von Furstenberg wrap dress every single time. I just did the work, better than any of them. Maya, a word? I looked up. Brad Simmons loomed over my desk, his smile not reaching his eyes. He was all blow-dried hair and capped tooth reassurance. A man who'd climbed the ladder on golf handicaps and schmoozing. Rumor was he was sleeping with Jessica from the business development team. It wasn't a rumor, it was an observable fact, evident in the way his gaze lingered on her and the way she got every prime client lead. Sure, Brad, great work on Viridian, he said, leaning a hand on my cubicle wall. The gesture was meant to be paternal, but it felt territorial, really solid. Jessica mentioned you carried the bulk of the analytics. Team effort, right? Jessica mentioned that of course she did. She'd presented the deck, my words coming out of her fire engine red lips, and taken the credit. The data was clear. I said neutrally. It presented itself. He chuckled, a dry sound, always so modest. Listen, we're celebrating the Viridian win at the Gilded Unicorn tonight. Drinks, appetizers. The whole team will be there. You're coming, right? It's important for morale, for visibility. The Gilded Unicorn, where a martini cost more than my hourly wage after taxes, where the conversation would revolve around Hampton's shares and who was getting promoted. My idea of hell, packaged in mahogany and brass. I have the Caldwell projections to finalize for tomorrow's. Maya. Brad's voice took on a warning edge, the friendly mask slipping. It's not a request. Jessica is expecting everyone. Don't be the reason team's spirit falters. He patted the cubicle wall twice. 7 sharp. We'll put it on the corporate card. Don't worry about the cost. The pause was deliberate. The subtext hung in the lemon-scented air. We know you're not like us. We know you budget. Come and be reminded. I forced a tight smile. 7 sharp. The Gilded Unicorn was everything I dreaded. Bass thumped through speakers disguised as art. People shrieked to be heard over the music. Jessica Thorne held court at a long table, a glittering queen bee in a sequined top. Her acolytes, Chloe and Mark, flanked her, laughing too loudly at everything she said. Maya, you made it. Jessica's voice cut through the din, sugary and sharp. She waved me over. We saved you a seat. In the back, near the kitchen door. Less drafty there. I took the seat, accepting a menu from a harried waiter. The conversation flowed around me. Talk of bonuses. A scathing review of someone's wedding. A debate about the best detox cleanse. I sipped my seltzer. A ghost at the feast. Brad stood, clinking a fork against his whiskey glass. Team, a toast. To us. And to the Viridian win, a victory for collaboration, for pulling together. Glasses were raised. To collaboration, they chorused. My contribution, my late nights, were a ghost in the toast. As the chatter resumed, Jessica leaned across the table, her smile widening. Her eyes, a cold, calculating blue, scanned me from my sensible chignon to my simple black sheath dress. They lingered near my collarbone. You know, I've been meaning to ask. She began, her voice pitched to Carrie. Chloe and Mark leaned in, sensing blood in the water. Maya, honey, what is that you're always wearing? I met her gaze. Wearing. The scent, she said, wrinkling her perfectly sculpted nose. She took an exaggerated, delicate sniff in my direction. A few other conversations at the table died down. It's so distinctive, isn't it, guys? Chloe, ever the eager echo, nodded vigorously. Oh, totally. I noticed it in the elevator this morning. Very earthy. Mark, grinning, chimed in. Yeah, like, I don't know, old books and wet herbs? My grandma's attic kind of vibe. Trying for that niche Brooklyn apothecary thing. Maya, very authentic. He said authentic, like it was a synonym for cheap. Heat crept up my neck, but I kept my face a placid mask. My scent was ephemer, amber, not dirt, vetiver and oak moss, not wet herbs. A masterpiece of memory and loss, not a goddamn attic. It's just a personal blend, I said, my voice even. A personal blend, Jessica repeated, as if I'd said I distilled it in my bathtub. How creative. It's just, in a client-facing environment, we have to be so mindful of allergens, of making a cohesive impression. Stratica has a brand, clean, modern, not so potent. She smiled, all faux concern. Where did you get it? One of those little stores in, what's that neighborhood you live in? Bushwick? The implication was clear. The poor part of Brooklyn. The part with the graffiti and the hipsters. Not the doorman buildings and the organic grocers. It was a gift. I lied smoothly. Ah, Jessica said, sipping her martini. Well, it's certainly memorable. Like I said, just be mindful. We don't want the partners thinking we've got a farmer's market open in the cubicles. She let out a tinkling laugh. Chloe and Mark joined in. Brad, from the head of the table, caught the tail end of the conversation. Everything okay over there? He called, his tone jovial, just admiring Maya's unique style. Brad, Jessica trilled. Brad's eyes met mine, and I saw it there. Not support, but a mild irritation that I'd become a topic, however minor, a wrinkle in his smooth evening. Well, as long as it's not affecting client work, he said lightly, then turned away. The dismissal was complete. The message was received. My scent, my otherness, was a problem to be managed. A joke they shared. The conversation moved on, leaving me marinating in the humiliation. I sat through another hour of it, a smiling statue, while inside, a cold, hard knot of resolve formed. I left as early as I dared, the echo of their laughter chasing me onto the sidewalk, the subway ride back to my quiet, book-lined apartment in Brooklyn was a blur. I didn't cry. Crying was for losses. This was a skirmish. Inside my apartment, I went straight to the dresser. There it stood, a simple, opaque glass bottle with a minimalist black cap. No label. I picked it up, the glass cool against my palm. I didn't spray it. I just uncapped it and brought it to my nose. Éphémère. The rush was immediate. Not just the scent at the top notes of bitter bergamot and rosemary. The heart of warm labdanum and myrrh. The deep, mossy, almost melancholy dry down of vetiver and castoreum. It was the memory. The damp heat of a gross afternoon. The smell of curing jasmine and fleur. The feel of rough stone under my fingertips in the courtyard of the perfumery. And him, his laughter, low and warm against my ear. His hands, stained with essential oils, guiding mine over the scent strips. This one, it is not a fragrance. Sherry, it is a ghost, a beautiful, haunting ghost. Y will call it éphémère. For you, only ever for you. I snapped the cap back on, the sound loud in the silent room. I placed the bottle back on the dresser, a soldier returning a weapon to its rack. The ghost was mine to command. The memories were mine to bear. And the fools in their glass tower on Fifth Avenue, with their stale coffee and emptier souls, could sneer all they wanted. The following Monday, I arrived earlier than anyone. I wore a crisp white shirt and black trousers, and I applied ephemer with deliberate care, not a single dab at each wrist, one at the base of my throat, my armor. Jessica made a show of waving a hand in front of her face when I passed her desk, still committed to the natural vibe. I see. Maya, I didn't break stride. Good morning. Jessica, the real battle wasn't fought with words in a hallway. It was fought in the data. Brad had been chasing Caldwell Sons, a stubborn, old-school manufacturing firm, for months. Jessica had taken them to lavish lunches that went nowhere. Their CEO, a man named Frank Caldwell, who valued substance over flash, was notoriously unimpressed by Stratica's usual glossy pitches. I spent 3 days buried in Caldwell's publicly available financials, industry reports, even the local newspapers from their Ohio headquarters. I bypassed Brad, went straight to the research pool, and pulled every scrap of data. I saw a pattern they'd all missed, a vulnerability in their supply chain that was also their biggest opportunity for localized, sustainable growth. It wasn't a flashy, digital transformative fantasy. It was a pragmatic, cost-saving, community-building blueprint. I wrote the proposal myself, clear, concise, brutal in its logic. I emailed it directly to Frank Caldwell's executive assistant, with a subject line that stated the annual savings figure to the dollar. No fluff, no Jessica, no Brad. 2 hours later, my desk phone rang, a gruff, no-nonsense voice. Frank Caldwell. Is this Maya Chin? Yes, Mr. Caldwell. This proposal, you wrote it? I did. The numbers on the polymer sourcing. You stand by them? Down to the decimal. I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. He grunted. My guys have been trying to figure that bottleneck for a year. You pinpointed it in a week. Your people have been sending me sparkly PowerPoints about cloud integration. You send me a spreadsheet that makes sense. He paused. I want you on a call with my operations team tomorrow. Just you. Can you do that? Yes, sir. Good. 9 a.m. sharp. He hung up. I sat back in my chair, a slow, fierce smile touching my lips. I looked over the partition. Jessica was at the printer, laughing with Chloe, holding a sheaf of what looked like venue brochures for another client networking event. I stood up, walked calmly to Brad's office, and knocked. He was on the phone, but waved me in. I waited until he finished. Brad, I have an update. Frank Caldwell just called. He's agreed to a discovery call tomorrow at 9 a.m. to discuss my supply chain proposal. He's requested that I lead it. Brad's face went through a fascinating transformation. Confusion, disbelief, dawning comprehension, and finally, a strained, professional approval. Caldwell, he called you? Directly? He did. The proposal is in the shared drive, under Caldwell Chin Analysis. I've CC'd you. I see. That's proactive of you. Maya, Jessica was heading that account. Her focus seems to be on the broader relationship. I said smoothly, this is a tactical solution. I'm happy to brief her after the call. Brad stared at me, really looked at me, as if seeing me for the first time. The quiet woman with the weird perfume had just landed a whale he'd been failing to hook for months. With a spreadsheet, the unspoken rules of his world were being bent, and it unsettled him. Fine, good work. Keep me posted. The dismissal was curt, uneasy. As I left his office, I caught Jessica's eye across the bullpen. The laughter had died on her face. She'd been close enough to hear. Her expression was a masterpiece of controlled fury. Her cheeks blotched with red. She saw me looking, and her eyes narrowed into venomous slits. The silent message was clear. This isn't over. I gave her a small, polite nod and returned to my desk. The ghost of Ephemeros around me. A complex, beautiful shield. The first shot in my war had been fired, and it had hit its mark. The battle, I knew, was just beginning. The silence in the bullpen the morning after the Caldwell call was a physical thing, thick and charged like the air before a storm. Jessica's desk was conspicuously empty at a client breakfast. According to her out-of-office auto-reply, Chloe and Mark moved through the space like ghosts, avoiding my eye. My inbox, however, was not silent. It chimed with a meeting invite from Brad, titled Touch Base, Career Pathing, for 10 a.m. I arrived at his office precisely on time. He was on the phone, his back to the glass wall, but waved me in with a jovial flourish. Absolutely. Frank, a real team effort over here. Maya's a star. We're so proud. Yes, yes. The full Stratica machine is behind you now. He hung up and turned, the smile not quite erasing the tension around his eyes. Maya, shut the door. Will you? I did, taking the seat opposite his minimalist steel desk. The view behind him was all cold, hard Manhattan angles. Frank Caldwell is thrilled. Brad began, steepling his fingers. Truly, he's fast-tracking the proposal. This could be a 7-figure engagement. That's excellent news, I said, waiting. It is. And your initiative, it's been noted. He paused, choosing his words with the care of a man defusing a bomb. Initiative is a double-edged sword. Maya, at Stratica, we value it, but we cherish collaboration, synergy, being a team player. The data supported the initiative. I replied. Presenting it directly seemed the most logical path to a swift response. The logical path, Brad repeated, a hint of steel entering his tone. Sometimes, the logical path can seem like going around established channels. Jessica feels that, and I have to consider her perspective as the relationship lead that her position was undermined. There it was, not a congratulations, but a reprimand wrapped in management speak. My intent was to secure the client, not to undermine anyone. I said, my voice level. The proposal is now a Stratica asset. Jessica can leverage it fully for the broader relationship. As I mentioned, Brad leaned forward, the paternal mask slipping back on, but it was cracked, showing the frustration beneath. Maya, look, you're incredibly talented, a workhorse, but this isn't a solo sport. Jessica is well connected. She's a rainmaker in her own way. The friction that's causing noise. Noise I have to manage. He sighed, as if the burden were immense. I want to help you here. I really do. Part of advancing at this level is soft skills. Perception. You need to be seen as part of the fabric. What are you suggesting, Brad? Integration. He said, spreading his hands. Be present. The team is going to that new speakeasy in the West Village Friday night. Jessica organized it. You should be there. Mingle. Laugh. Have a drink. Show them you're one of the tribe. The Gilded Unicorn. Part 2. I knew the drill. The pressure to order the most expensive cocktail. To split bills unevenly. To perform a version of myself that didn't exist. The Caldwell follow-up work will require late nights this week. I tried. All the more reason to blow off steam with the team. He countered smoothly. Consider it a professional development opportunity. Now, about expenses, he gave a conspiratorial wince. The corporate card for these things is a nightmare to reconcile after. Why don't you put it on your personal card? Submit the receipt, and we'll fast-track the reimbursement. Simpler for everyone. It was a test, a petty, transparent one. He and I both knew fast track for me could mean months. A silent tax on my refusal to conform. The cost of a night at that place would sting. I held his gaze. I'll see what I can manage with my workload. His smile tightened. Do that. Maya, your year-end review is coming up. I'd love to write a glowing one. Plays well with others is a key metric. The threat, now explicit, hung in the air between us. Play the game, or your exceptional work won't be enough. Understood, I said, rising. I left his office, the phantom scent of ephemer. Today, just a whisper on my skin that the only armor I had against the cloying smell of his hypocrisy. I didn't go to the speakeasy. I stayed until 9 p.m., building a financial model for Caldwell so bulletproof it could survive a nuclear war. The data was my language, my truth. It didn't lie. It didn't play politics. Around 8 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. A photo from inside a dark, crowded bar. Jessica, her head thrown back in laughter, flanked by Chloe and Mark, all holding cocktails that glowed with neon ice cubes. The caption, from a blocked number, read, "We missed you. Cocktail glass next time. Hugs and kisses, Team Stratica." The cruelty was so childish it was almost impressive. The retaliation was more sophisticated. The following Monday, I was pulled into an urgent, all-hands meeting for a new pitch for a luxury skincare brand. Lumini, Jessica, radiant in ice blue silk, stood at the head of the conference room. "Team, this is a big one," she announced. "Lumini wants a complete rebrand strategy, digital ecosystem, the works. The creative brief is expansive." She smiled, a shark smile, and her eyes found mine. "Maya, we're going to need incredibly robust, deep dive analytics to back the vision, consumer sentiment, cross-channel engagement metrics, predictive ROI on influencer partnerships, the whole 9 yards. I need a comprehensive data pack, everything, and I need the first draft by Thursday EOD so I can integrate it into the master deck." The request was absurd in its scope and time frame. It was a mountain of work designed to bury me, to keep me shackled to my desk while she took the glory. The master deck would, of course, feature her name prominently. Thursday is ambitious for that depth of analysis, I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Oh, I have every faith in you," Jessica chirped. "You're our data wizard. And this is priority one. Brad's orders." She dropped his name like a gavel. "Just funnel everything to me. I'll be the point of synthesis for the client presentation." I was to be the ghost in the machine, the unseen engine. I nodded curtly. "I'll see what's feasible." Later, in the kitchenette, as I was pouring the dregs of the burnt coffee, Chloe sidled up to the espresso machine. "Too close. That Lumini brief is intense." "Huh," she said, not looking at me, fussing with a pod. "Jessica's really counting on you. It's a huge account for Brad's portfolio." She let the implication hang. A promotion for Brad meant security for his favorite. You know how it is. The team player gets the rewards. The lone wolf. She finally glanced at me, her expression one of fake pity. "Well, sometimes they just get left out in the cold. And that sent you where? It's strong in here. Maybe go a little lighter? Just some friendly advice." I put the coffee carafe down with a soft clink and turned to face her fully. "Thank you for the advice, Chloe. And for the record," I leaned in slightly, my voice dropping to a confidential murmur. "The jasmine and gardenia scent you're wearing? The one that's supposed to mimic Grand Ball? The alcohol in the top notes hasn't fully evaporated. It smells like hairspray and regret. You should ask for a refund." Her jaw went slack. I picked up my mug and walked out, leaving her sputtering by the machine. The siege continued. Jessica accidentally deleted a critical file I'd shared, claiming a server error, setting me back half a day. Mark from accounting started questioning minor expense line items on my Caldwell project with pedantic zeal, a delay tactic that smelled of Jessica's influence. Through it all, I worked. I built the Lumini data pack, a thing of brutal, elegant logic, I delivered it Thursday at 6:59 p.m. As instructed, I received a one-line auto reply. T checks. Will review. The following Tuesday, the entire department was summoned for the Lumini pitch walkthrough. Jessica stood before the big screen, laser pointer in hand. The deck was slick, full of generic stock photos of smiling women and buzzwords. Synergy, disruption, authentic storytelling. Then she flipped to a section titled Core Consumer Insight. The data-backed perspective. My slides, my charts, my hard-won conclusions. She presented them verbatim, pausing to emphasize a point I'd crafted. And as the data clearly shows, the aspirational driver isn't luxury for luxury's sake, but for attainable self-investment, a pivot we can own. Brad, sitting in the front row, nodded along, beaming. Powerful. Jessica, really powerful. This is exactly the kind of integrated thinking we sell. I sat in the back, my face a placid mask, when she finished to a smattering of applause. Brad took the floor. Great work. Team, a truly collaborative effort. His eyes swept the room, barely grazing over me. Now, before we wrap, big news. Global is paying attention. The CEO himself, Etienne Lacroix, will be here in 3 weeks for a full portfolio review. This isn't a social call. He's looking at leadership, at potential, at who's ready for the next level. The Lumini pitch will be a centerpiece of our review, so let's polish it to perfection. Jessica, you'll be our lead presenter. Jessica glowed with triumph. This was her moment, built on my labor. After the meeting broke, she swept past my desk, dropping a stack of printed competitive analyses. Maya, sweetie, for the Lumini QA prep, I need a teardown of every campaign our top 3 rivals have run in the last 18 months. By Monday, and keep the write-ups concise. Bullet points. My time is precious. It was busy work of the highest order, a blatant power play. That night, drained and hollow, I was reviewing the mind-numbing competitor reports when my personal phone buzzed with an unknown number. A 212 area code. I answered, expecting a recruiter. Maya Chin? Yes. Maya. Hi. It's Derek Soames from Kestrel Partners. We spoke briefly at the Forbes Summit last fall. You gave me your card after the panel on predictive analytics. I remembered. A sharp-eyed man in a good suit, more interested in my take on data than in small talk. I remember. Derek, what can I do for you? I'll cut to the chase. I have a client, a hot fintech startup, Series C funded. They're desperate for a head of strategic insights who can speak both data and business. Your name came up. The base is 50% above your current, plus serious equity. They've seen your Caldwell work. It's making the rounds. Quietly, they're impressed. The number he mentioned was staggering. It was freedom. It was an escape from Jessica, from Brad, from the sneers in the kitchenette. It was validation, handed to me on a silver platter. That's a compelling opportunity. I managed, my heart thudding. I think you'd be perfect. Can you have breakfast tomorrow? We can talk details. They're moving fast. I looked around my quiet apartment, my eyes landing on the unmarked bottle on my dresser. Éphémère, a ghost, a promise, a life I'd burned to the ground. Etienne Lacroix was coming. The name sent a jolt through me that had nothing to do with corporate ambition and everything to do with a sun-drenched stone courtyard and the smell of jasmine absolute. He was the ghost in my perfume, the man who had seen the artist in me before I saw the strategist. He was also the man who had vanished, leaving only a check and a shattered heart. Maya, Derek's voice pulled me back. Tomorrow breakfast. I can't. I heard myself say. The surprise in my own voice mirrored his. I'm in the middle of a critical project. A once-in-a-carrier client review. I need to see it through. There was a pause on the line. That's a substantial offer to put on hold. Maya, this role won't stay open. I understand, and I'm grateful. Truly, If the opportunity is meant to be, it'll be there in a few weeks. Right now, I have something I need to finish here. We ended the call with a promise to reconnect after the CEO visit. I put the phone down, my hand trembling slightly. I had just turned down a lifeline. For what? For the chance to show a man who had forgotten me that I had survived? For the petty, burning desire to see the look on Jessica's face when her house of cards, built on my work, finally met a win that could not be manipulated? I walked to the dresser, picked up the bottle, and this time I sprayed a single, defiant cloud of ephemera into the still air of my apartment. The scent bloomed to bitter, beautiful, resilient. It was the smell of my past, and perhaps a weapon for my future. The game at Stratica was rigged. The scales tipped by Brad's favoritism and Jessica's malice. But Etienne's arrival was a wild card, and I was done playing by their rules. I would build the most flawless, undeniable body of work this office had ever seen. I would be the ghost in their machine, the silent, indispensable engine. And when the CEO from Paris came, he would either be my judge, my jury, or my long-lost, unwitting executioner. I opened my laptop, the glow of the screen reflecting in my determined eyes. The competitor reports could wait. I had a different document to craft, a concise, brilliant, standalone summary of the Lumini strategy, translated into flawless French, just in case. The email from Brad hit my inbox at 7:03 a.m. Its subject line a bland, bureaucratic lie, all staff reminder, professional presentation, client sensitivity. My thumb hovered over the screen. A cold, familiar, not tightening in my stomach before I even opened it. It was CC'd to the entire New York office. Team, as you know, we're honored to be hosting Stratica Global CEO Etienne Lacroix for a comprehensive portfolio review next Thursday. This is a tremendous opportunity to showcase the excellence of our New York office. Monsieur Lacroix, like many of our top-tier global clients, is a person of refined sensibility, in the spirit of presenting a unified, professional, and considerate front. We ask that on the day of his visit, all staff be mindful of personal scent choices. Strong perfumes, colognes, or other potent personal fragrances can be distracting or, for some, a source of discomfort. We strive to maintain a neutral, welcoming environment for all. Please, out of respect for our distinguished guest and your colleagues, refrain from wearing any noticeable fragrance on Thursday. Let our work and our professionalism be the only thing that makes a statement. Best, Brad Simmons, Director, Strategic Consulting. I read it twice. The words were corporate, polite, and utterly, viciously specific. Refined sensibility, potent personal fragrances, a source of discomfort that IT was a missile, dressed up as a memo, and it had my name written all over it. Jessica's fingerprints were all over it, but Brad had pulled the trigger. The client's sensitivity was a masterstroke that impossible to argue against without sounding unprofessional, selfish, or, as they wanted to paint me, fundamentally other. My phone buzzed. A text from Chloe, in our team's group chat, from which I was never removed. A constant audience for their performances. Such an important reminder. Can't wait to meet M. Lacroix. Hashtag professionalism. Hashtag Team Stratica Glowing Star. Mark replied seconds later. Copy that. Neutral all the way. The work should speak for itself. I put the phone down, face up on my desk. I didn't need to see Jessica's reply to know the smug satisfaction radiating from her corner office. She had won, publicly, institutionally. She had branded my scent.my ephemera, the last, beautiful ghost of a life I'd burned.as unprofessional. As an offense, she had reduced the most intimate, creative part of my history to a corporate hygiene issue. The cold anger that rose in me was cleaner, sharper than any I'd felt before. It cut through the humiliation, leaving behind a glacial clarity. I would not cry. I would not complain. I would not even acknowledge it. But I also would not obey. A memory, unbidden and vivid, sliced through the sterile office air. Not of Jessica's sneer, but of sun so bright it bleached the color from the ancient stone of Gros. The smell wasn't lemon disinfectant, but a cacophony of life. Jasmine and fleurceau, sweet it felt thick. The green crush of lavender from the fields below. The damp, earthy scent of the old workshops, stone floor. I was 23, hands stained with vetiver, squinting at a chromatograph readout. The air in the small lab was heavy with the ghosts of 100 failed trials, a rose that turned metallic, a sandalwood that smelled of sour milk. You are frowning at the machine as if it has insulted your grandmother. A voice said, warm and laced with a Parisian accent that made even mundane English sound like secret. I didn't need to look up. I knew his presence by the shift in the air. A new note entering the olfactory symphony. Crisp linen, dry hay, a faint, expensive soap, and beneath it, something darker, like unsmoked tobacco. Etienne, it has, I muttered, pushing a stray hair from my forehead with the back of my wrist. It's telling me my ratios are off. Again, the ambroxan is overwhelming the bergamot. It smells cheap. He leaned against the doorway, a tall silhouette against the Provençal light. Etienne Lacroix, 30 then, with the weary eyes of a man who'd inherited a world too young and the restless energy of one trying to escape it. He wasn't supposed to be here, in this dusty, legendary, failing perfumery. He was supposed to be in Paris, in boardrooms, saving the family's luxury goods empire. He'd come here, he said, for inspiration. A cliché. I'd thought him another bored, rich boy, until I saw him smell a drop of pure oud oil for the first time, that his eyes closed, a tremor going through him, as if listening to a symphony only he could hear. Let me, he said, moving into the small space. He took the scent strip from my fingers, his own brushing mine. He brought it to his nose, closed his eyes, inhaled. He held it. The silence stretched, filled only with the hum of the old fridge, holding the absolutes. The machine is wrong, he said finally, his eyes opening, finding mine. They were a gray blue, like the sea before a storm. The bergamot is not being overwhelmed. It is arguing with the ambroxan. It is a fight, a beautiful, tragic fight. He handed the strip back. What are you trying to capture? I looked away, suddenly shy. A memory that doesn't exist. Something that feels like the moment just after a fire goes out. The warmth of the embers, but the knowledge of the cold to come. Something ephemeral. He was very still. Éphémère. He breathed. The French word a sigh. A ghost. That was the beginning. He started spending his days in the lab with me, not as the heir, but as an apprentice. He had a raw, instinctive talent, a nose that could deconstruct a scent into its emotional components. I had the chemistry, the discipline. We became collaborators. Then, inevitably, more. The memories came in flashes, relentless and sweetly painful. Him, tracing the line of my jaw with a finger still smelling of oak moss. You see the world in molecules and reactions. Maya, I see it in stories. We are both trying to bottle ghosts. Me, laughing, wiping a smudge of orris butter from his cheek in the golden evening light. Your ghosts are more expensive than mine. Mine just smell like old books and loneliness. His face, suddenly serious, never. What you create, it is the smell of truth, of a soul that feels too deeply. It is the most beautiful, heartbreaking thing I have ever known. He helped me craft ephemer. It was his idea to add the cold. Smoky note of birch tar under the warm amber, to capture the duality that the fleeting warmth, the enduring ash. Pour toi, he'd whisper into my hair as we worked late, the whole world reduced to the space between us and the alchemy on the blotter. Seulement pour toi, only for you. And then, the end, not with a fight, but with a silence. He got a call, his face draining of color. Mon père, il est tombé. His father, a stroke. The empire was crumbling. He left that night, a hurried, desperate kiss, a promise to call. Une semaine. Maya, je reviens. A week. I'll be back. The call that came a week later wasn't from him. It was from a lawyer, speaking in crisp, impersonal French. A.M. LaCroix had arranged for a consultation fee for my work on a proprietary fragrance concept. The sum wired to my account was obscene, life-changing. There was no note, no explanation, just a transaction. I'd called, texted, written letters, silence. I finally went to Paris, to the imposing LaCroix headquarters on the Rue du Faubourg Saint-Honoré. I was met by a sleek, apologetic assistant. M. LaCroix is unavailable. He is engaged with family matters. He thanks you for your discretion and wishes you well in your future endeavors. The dismissal was absolute, polished, and final. I was a line item, a ghost he had paid off and excised. I had sold the ephemera formula that same week to a niche broker, anonymously. The money, combined with his fee, was my ticket out, my reinvention. I buried the perfumer, burned the girl from Grasse, and built Maya Chin, strategist, from the ashes. The only thing I kept was that single, original bottle, a reminder of the beauty, and the cost of being ephemeral. The buzz of my office phone jerked me back to the present. It was Brad's assistant. Maya, Brad wants to see you in the small conference room. Now, please. The past receded, leaving the cold, sharp present. I stood, smoothing my jacket. I didn't reach for my perfume. I didn't need to. Today, I was the ember and the ash. I walked to the conference room. Brad and Jessica were already there, sitting on one side of the table like a tribunal. Jessica's expression was one of pure, undiluted victory. Maya, close the door, Brad said, his voice strained. He tapped the printed email on the table. You saw the memo. I did. It's standard protocol for high-level visits. Jessica chimed in, her voice dripping with faux concern. We just want everything to go smoothly. You understand, right? Some people's signatures can be a bit overwhelming. We wouldn't want to make M. LaCroix uncomfortable. I looked directly at her. My signature, as you call it, has never been mentioned in a performance review. My analytics, however, have been consistently rated, exceeds expectations. Are we now evaluating consultants based on their choice of personal grooming products? Brad held up a placating hand. Now, Maya, no one's saying that. This is about perception, about presenting a unified front. Jessica's just thinking of the team, of the company's image. The company's image, I repeated slowly, and my scent, specifically, is a threat to that image. It's distinctive, Jessica said, the word a weapon, and in a high-pressure meeting, with a global executive known for his particular tastes. We need neutral. We need to be a blank canvas. Comprenez-vous? She threw in the French with a smirk, a little barb. I ignored her, keeping my eyes on Brad. Is this a formal directive? Brad? Am I to be formally disciplined if I wear a personal fragrance on Thursday? He shifted in his seat, uncomfortable with the bluntness. It's a strong request. From leadership, for the good of the team. I see, I said. I let the silence hang. Watching them, Brad looked away. Jessica's smirk widened. Will there be a scent checkpoint at the door? Will HR be providing odor-neutralizing body spray? Don't be dramatic. Maya, Jessica snapped, her composure cracking for a second. I'm seeking clarification on policy. I said, my voice ice. If the concern is allergens, HR should be notified to survey the entire staff for all potential allergens. Perfume, peanuts, pet dander on clothing. A blanket ban on one personal choice seems discriminatory and selective. Brad's head snapped up. It is not discriminatory. It is a temporary, reasonable request for a major corporate event. I expect you to comply. Maya, As a team player, the last 3 words were heavy with threat. I stood up. The meeting was over. They had made their move. Understood, I said, my tone giving nothing away. I walked back to my desk, the eyes of the office on me. The memo was on every screen. I was the punchline. Sitting down, I opened my bottom desk drawer. From beneath a stack of notebooks, I withdrew the small, unlabeled bottle. I held it in my palm, the glass cool and familiar. Éphémère, a ghost, my ghost. I would not be erased, not by Jessica's pettiness, not by Brad's cowardice. Etienne Lacroix was coming, the man who had named this scent, who had breathed it into my skin and then vanished. He was the architect of this ghost. Let him smell it. Let him remember. A plan, cold and precise, formed in my mind. I would comply, publicly. I would be the picture of professionalism. And on Thursday, I would wear ephemeera not as a bold statement, but as a secret, a single, microscopic drop at each pulse point, so close to the skin that only someone coming very near, someone truly looking for it, would ever know it was there. And I would make sure Etienne Lacroix had a reason to come very, very near. The week leading up to Etienne Lacroix's visit was a masterclass in psychological warfare disguised as corporate preparation. The memo had been the opening salvo, and now the full assault began. A palpable tension, equal parts anxiety and sickening glee, crackled through the Stradica offices. Jessica, anointed as the de facto captain of this performance, was in her element. She called a mandatory all-hands prep meeting for the strategy team. We were crammed into the largest conference room, the air already stale with anticipation and the cloying, inoffensive citrus of the office diffusers. Jessica stood at the head of the table, a vision of corporate aggression in a sharply tailored cream suit. Brad sat to her right, a silent, approving gargoyle. Okay, people, listen up, Jessica began, clapping her hands together as if we were a sluggish sports team. The big day is Thursday. Lacroix's schedule is tight. He's meeting with the partners first. Then he'll be in this room at 10 a.m. sharp for our portfolio deep dive. This is our Super Bowl, our everything. She paced, laser pointer clicking on and off like a nervous tick. The Lumini pitch will be the centerpiece. I'll be leading. Mark, you're on supporting data slides. Chloe, you handle the competitive landscape visuals. She assigned roles with the brisk efficiency of a general deploying troops to a foregone conclusion. My name wasn't called. I sat quietly, my notebook open, a pen in my hand. I was a spectator in my own department's biggest moment. Now, Jessica said, pausing for dramatic effect. She looked directly at me, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her face. We've all seen the memo from Brad. Professionalism, uniformity. We are one team, with one goal, to impress. Her gaze swept the room, but it was a bullseye painted on my forehead. That means conservative attire. That means minimal, if any, jewelry. And it absolutely, positively means. Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial, yet perfectly audible, register. No strong perfumes, colognes, or personal scents-off any kind. A few people shifted uncomfortably. A junior analyst named David, who always wore a very nice, very subtle vetiver cologne, looked down at his hands. Lacroix is a connoisseur. Jessica continued, her tone implying she knew him intimately. He has a discerning palate. The last thing we need is some overpowering, distracting scent throwing off the whole vibe of the room. We need to be a blank slate, a clean, odor-free canvas for our work to shine. So, for the love of God, if you usually bathe in Axe body spray or wear your grandma's patchouli oil, give it a rest on Thursday. Shower with unscented soap. I'm serious. A few forced laughs erupted from her clique. My face felt like a mask of calm. Inside, the glacial resolve from the other night had hardened into diamond. Brad, cleared his throat, seizing the mantle of serious management. Jessica's right. This is about respect. We're representing Stratica Global. This isn't the place for personal expression. It's a place for professional excellence. Let's keep the focus on the work. People, any questions? His eyes scanned the room, daring anyone to speak. The silence was absolute. It was a public flaying, and everyone knew I was the one being skinned. David wouldn't meet my eyes. Others studied the grain of the conference table. Good, Brad said, slapping the table. Jessica, run us through the Lumini deck flow one more time. As Jessica began clicking through slides, slides, with her branding slapped on them that I let the words wash over me. I didn't need to listen. I knew every data point, every conclusion. Instead, I focused on my plan. The vial of Ephemerawes in my apartment, a soldier awaiting its orders. The independent, French-translated summary of the Lumini strategy was saved in a hidden folder on my cloud drive, ready to be printed on the finest paper I could find, my armor and my sword. Later that afternoon, the conflict moved from the theoretical to the tangible. Jessica summoned me to her office. "Close the door," she said, not looking up from her screen. I did. She finally swiveled her chair to face me. The faux concern was gone, replaced by naked hostility. "I'm going to be straight with you, Maya. I've reviewed your data pack for Lumini, and it's a mess. It's dense. It's confusing. You've buried the lead under a mountain of spreadsheets. LaCroix doesn't have time to be a forensic accountant. He needs the story, the vision." She gestured dismissively at the air. "I'm cutting 70% of it, streamlining. 70%. She was going to eviscerate the analytical backbone, leaving only the glossy, empty conclusions. The conclusions my data proved. The data is the story. Jessica," I said, my voice low and even. "The vision you're selling is built on the correlations in those spreadsheets. Remove them, and it's just marketing poetry. It won't hold up under serious scrutiny." Her eyes flashed. "Don't tell me about scrutiny. I'm the one presenting. I know what the room can handle. Your job was to provide the raw material. My job is to shape it. So I'm shaping it. I need you to rework slides 15 through 40. Cut the jargon. Simplify the charts. I want it by end of day tomorrow." She was asking me to gut my own work, to make it toothless, to make her look good by making the analysis look simple. "I can't do that," I said simply. The words hung in the air. Jessica blinked, as if I'd spoken in another language. "Excuse me? The analysis stands as is. The complexity is necessary. It's what makes the strategy defensible and unique. Simplifying it to that degree would be intellectually dishonest and, frankly, a disservice to the client." Her face flushed an ugly red. "A disservice? I am the client lead. I'd side what's a disservice. Your job is to execute. If you can't execute to my specifications, then maybe you're not a good fit for this team." The threat was out in the open now. The carefully curated workplace veneer had cracked. My fit for the team is evidenced by the Caldwell deal and the robustness of this analysis. I replied, standing my ground. "If you alter the core data beyond recognition, you own the outcome. But I will not be party to misrepresenting the facts. You have the report. Use it as you see fit." I turned to leave. "Maya." Brad's voice came from the doorway. He must have been listening. His face was a thundercloud. A word. Now, in my office. I followed him, feeling Jessica's venomous stare burning into my back. In his office, Brad didn't sit. He stood behind his desk, leaning on it, his voice a low, angry hiss. "What the hell was that? You openly defied Jessica? In front of," he gestured vaguely, "then the middle of the goddamn office? She asked me to falsify the analytical depth of a major client presentation. Brad, to make it seem simpler than it is. That's a liability. She asked you to make it presentable." He snapped. "You are not the star of this show. Maya, Jessica is." Your role is to support, to be a team player. This grandstanding, this obstinance, it ends now. You will do what Jessica asks, or I will personally see to it that your contribution to Lumini dot and to this team that IS noted as insubordinate and uncooperative in your permanent file. Do you understand what that means for your year-end bonus? For your future here, the hammer had finally fallen. No more veiled threats. This was the ultimatum. Kneel, or be destroyed. I looked at him, this man whose approval I had once, foolishly, thought was tied to merit. I understand perfectly, Brad, my role, my contribution, and my professional ethics. I took a slow breath. I will not alter the foundational data. It is accurate and complete. However, to ensure the integrity of the information is available if needed, I will exercise my professional obligation to provide a complete, unaltered analysis if directly questioned by senior leadership during the review. That is my final position. His jaw worked. He was trapped. He couldn't explicitly order me to lie, not in so many words. But my stance was a declaration of war. Fine. He spat. You want to be a purist? You can be a purist from the sidelines. You're removed from the main presentation. You'll be on the logistics team for the day, setting up the conference room, managing the tech, ordering the goddamn lunch. You want to be a martyr for data integrity? Martyr yourself with a platter of sandwiches. It was the final, brutal exclusion. I was being banished to the background, made a stagehand in my own play. Understood, I said, my voice devoid of all emotion. The next 2 days were a study in public exile. I was handed a checklist for the logistics team, that a team of one. I confirmed audio-visual setups. I liaised with the caterer on gluten-free options. I was a ghost in the machinery, invisible to the others who were frantically rehearsing their talking points, fussing over their scent-free outfits. The night before the visit, in my apartment, I executed my plan with the precision of a surgeon. I laid out my clothes, a simple, impeccably cut black wool dress, severe and professional. Then, I took the bottle of ephemera. I unscrewed the cap. Instead of spraying, I dipped the tip of my finger into the neck of the bottle, collecting a minuscule droplet of the amber liquid. With deliberate care, I dabbed it on my skin. One tiny touch at the base of my throat, hidden under the collar of my dress. One on the inside of each wrist, where the pulse was faint but present. A final, almost invisible touch behind each ear. The scent was a secret, a whisper, a ghost clinging to my skin. You would have to be inches away. You would have to be looking for it, to know it was there. I printed my document, not on office paper, on heavy, creamy cardstock, the English version on one side, the flawless French translation on the other. It was 10 pages of concentrated insight, the soul of the Lumini strategy, stripped of Jessica's flash. I slid it into a simple, elegant portfolio. Thursday dawned cold and bright. The office was a hive of manicured panic. Jessica swept through in a couture dress the color of money, smelling of nothing but expensive, unscented lotion. Everyone, breathe, and remember, deodorant only. She trilled, getting a nervous laugh. I was in the main conference room by 7 a.m., checking microphone levels, aligning water glasses. I was a piece of furniture. At 9:55 a.m., the energy shifted. Brad, Jessica, and the chosen presenters gathered by the door, a flock of anxious birds. I stood by the tech console at the back of the room, my portfolio on the small ledge beside me. The door opened. A phalanx of senior partners entered first, their laughter too loud. And then, he was there, Etienne Lacroix. 5 years had etched finer lines at the corners of his eyes and a tighter set to his mouth. The youthful restlessness was gone, replaced by a contained, formidable authority. He wore a charcoal suit that cost more than my monthly rent, and an air of utter, unimpressed calm. His eyes, that stormy gray blue, scanned the room as he exchanged handshakes. missing nothing, giving less. Jessica practically vibrated with effort as she greeted him. Monsieur Lacroix, welcome. Such an honor. I'm Jessica Thorne. I'll be leading our deep dive today. Mademoiselle Thorne, he said, his voice deeper than I remembered, his accent a soft rasp. His handshake was brief, his attention already moving past her. His gaze swept the room, over the eager faces, over the polished table, past the partners, past Brad, and for the briefest, most electric second, it passed over me, a shadow at the back. There was no flicker of recognition, just the cool assessment of a man taking inventory of assets and liabilities. The presentations began. Jessica was, in fairness, a skilled performer. She was slick, confident, weaving a narrative of growth and disruption. But as she moved into the Lumini section, the lack of substance began to show. Her conclusions floated, untethered from the complex data that birthed them. She used words like paradigm shift and synergistic leverage without ever explaining the mechanics. Etienne listened, steepling his fingers. He didn't take notes. He just watched. The room grew warmer, the air thicker with the strain of performance. Then, halfway through, he held up a single finger. Jessica's sentence died in her throat. This point, he said, his voice cutting through the silence. The claim that Lumini's target demographic is moving from aspirational luxury to attainable self-investment. A significant pivot. You base this on what? Precisely? The focus group data from slide 8? He glanced at his copy of the deck. The sample size seems small. The methodology is not described. What was the control? How did you adjust for cultural bias in the questioning? Jessica froze. The color drained from her expertly made-up face. She looked, for the first time I had ever seen, genuinely terrified. She glanced wildly at Brad, who gave a microscopic, panicked shrug. The data, Jessica stammered, flipping pages pointlessly. The full methodology is in the extended appendices. I have the appendices, Etienne said, his tone not unkind, merely relentless. They contain financial projections, not methodological rigor for the core consumer insight, the insight upon which, it seems, this entire multi-million-dollar strategy hinges. He leaned back, his gaze cool. Who owns this analysis? The room held its breath. Jessica's mouth opened, but no sound came out. This was the moment. The crack in the wall. From the back of the room, near the tech console, a quiet, clear voice spoke. I do. Every head in the room swiveled. Brad's eyes bulged. Jessica looked like she'd been slapped. Etienne Lacroix's gaze traveled past the sea of stunned faces and found mine. For the first time, he really saw him, not a piece of furniture, but a person who had spoken. His brow furrowed, just slightly. I picked up my portfolio and walked forward. The click of my heels on the hardwood floor was the only sound. I stopped a respectful distance from the head of the table, but close enough. I placed the portfolio on the table in front of him, open to the French summary, the full methodological breakdown, including sample construction, control group parameters, sentiment analysis weighting, and cross-cultural validation, is detailed in Section 4. Monsieur Lacroix, I said, my voice steady, echoing in the silent room. I kept my eyes on him, not on Jessica's murderous glare. The pivot conclusion is supported by a longitudinal analysis of social sentiment, correlated with purchasing data across 3 competitor brands, adjusted for macroeconomic factors. The summary is in French for your convenience. The complete data set, as originally compiled, is available upon request. I didn't look at Jessica. I didn't look at Brad. I looked only at Etienne Lacroix. He held my gaze for a long, suspended moment. His eyes were unreadable. Then, slowly, he looked down at the document. He didn't read it. He simply placed a fingertip on the paper. His head tilted slightly, and then he did something that stopped the very air in the room. He lifted his hand from the paper and brought his fingers, briefly, to just beneath his nose. His eyes closed, not for long, a fraction of a second, a mere blink, but in that blink, his entire body stilled. The imposing CEO vanished, replaced by a man caught in a memory so powerful it was a physical shock. His eyes opened. They were no longer cool and assessing. They were dark, intense, locked on mine with a recognition that went beyond a name on a placard. A tremor, almost imperceptible, passed through his jaw. The scent had traveled. The ghost, my ghost, had whispered to him across the table. The room was a frozen tableau. No one understood what had just happened. They only saw the CEO's strange pause, his intense stare at the nobody from the logistics team. Etienne Lacroix recovered first, the mask of the CEO snapping back into place. But it was a mask that no longer quite fit. The eyes were still on me, sharp as broken glass. "And you are?" he asked, his voice a low murmur that somehow filled the entire silent room. I met his gaze, the ghost of ephemeria secret shield between us. "Maya Chin," I said, strategic analyst. A beat of silence, heavier than any that had come before. "Maya Chin," he repeated, as if tasting the name. Then he nodded, once, a curt, decisive motion. He looked at Brad, who seemed to have forgotten how to breathe. "We will continue. Mademoiselle Chin will remain. Her perspective appears the essential." He gestured to the empty chair beside him, the one reserved for the most senior partner. It was a command, not a request. I had been banished to the shadows, but the man from my past, summoned by a scent he never thought he'd smell again, had just dragged me into the blinding, brutal light. The game had changed. The battlefield was no longer mine alone. The silence in the wake of Etienne Lacroix's command was a living thing, thick and disbelieving. I was aware of every pair of eyes in the room. Brad's, wide with panic, Jessica's, blazing with a fury so pure it seemed to warp the air around her. The confused stares of the other analysts, the calculating looks from the senior partners, reassessing the chessboard in real time. Brad finally managed, his voice strained. "If M. Lacroix wishes, of course. Please, join us." The words tasted like ash in his mouth. The chair beside Etienne was massive, a throne of black leather and polished steel. It dwarfed the others. As I walked towards it, the click of my heels was the only sound. I felt like I was walking a plank. I Saturday placing my portfolio on the table, my movements measured. I did not look at Jessica. I could feel her gaze, like a physical heat on the side of my face. Etienne had already turned his attention back to the front of the room, his expression once more the unreadable mask of the CEO. "Proceed, Mademoiselle Thorne," he said, his tone cool. "You were explaining the media mix model." Jessica flinched as if struck. The smooth flow of her presentation was shattered. She stammered through the next few slides, her voice lacking its earlier conviction. Every time she made an assertion, Etienne's eyes would flick briefly to me, a silent, unspoken question. "Is this correct?" He didn't ask me aloud again. He didn't need to. The pressure was immense. I kept my responses minimal. A nod, a quiet "the data supports that," or a simple "the correlation is noted on page 7. It was enough. I was no longer a stagehand. I had become the prompter, the keeper of the truth Jessica was so loosely interpreting. The rest of the presentation was an autopsy. Jessica sweated under the harsh, invisible light of Etienne's scrutiny, which was now filtered through my silent, corroborating presence. Brad tried to jump in a few times with jovial, deflecting comments, but Etienne would simply wait for him to finish and then pose another razor-sharp question, often one that sent Jessica scrambling back to the deck, to the very data she had tried to bury. When it was finally, mercifully over, Jessica looked drained. The triumph of the morning was a distant memory. Etienne placed his palms flat on the table. Adequate, he said, the word falling like a verdict. The strategic vision has potential. The analytical foundation, his gaze shifted, just for an instant, to me, is robust. But the connective tissue between the two is weak. Mademoiselle Thorne, you speak of inspiration, but strategy is not poetry. It is architecture. Every claim must bear weight. He stood, and the room instinctively rose with him. Thank you for your time. He began moving towards the door, the partners flocking around him. Jessica, desperate, pushed forward. Monsieur Lacroix, if you have a moment, I'd love to walk you through some of the other. My schedule is compressed. He interrupted, not unkindly, but with a finality that brooked no argument. His eyes scanned the dispersing group and found me, still standing by the now empty chair, Mademoiselle Chin. A question about the cross-cultural validation matrix. Walk with me. It wasn't a request. For simple words that detonated in the middle of the room. I felt, rather than saw, Jessica freeze. Brad's mouth opened and closed silently. I picked up my portfolio and fell into step beside Etienne, leaving a pocket of stunned silence in our wake. The partners and his aides formed a loose perimeter around us as we moved into the hallway. We walked for a few seconds in silence, the entourage a step behind. The office had transformed into a gallery of staring statues. Analysts froze at their cubicles, phones half lifted to ears. As the CEO of Stratica Global walked down the central aisle with a woman from the logistics team, he didn't ask about the matrix. He spoke, his voice low, for my ears only, the methodology, the Granger causality tests you referenced in the appendix. Unconventional for a marketing analysis. He'd not only smelled the summary, he'd read it, deeply. In the few minutes he'd had it, unconventional problems require unconventional tools. I replied, my eyes fixed ahead. Lumini's market is noisy. Standard correlation was too blunt. Causality, even inferred, provides a stronger signal. The sound was considering, and the cost to model that. Significant analyst hours, but cheaper than a failed campaign based on a false correlation. A faint, almost imperceptible sound escaped him, not a laugh, but a sharp exhalation of acknowledgement. Indeed, he stopped walking, turning to face me fully. The entourage stopped a respectful distance away, pretending not to watch. We were in the middle of the open plan office. A fishbowl. You have a rigorous mind, Mademoiselle Chin. It is a rare commodity. His stormy eyes held mine, and in their depths, the professional assessment was now tangled with something else, something raw and personal and deeply confused. The scent you wear, he said, his voice dropping even further, a rough whisper. It is familiar. The air left my lungs. He'd said it, here, in front of everyone and no one. Many scents share common notes. Monsieur Lacroix, I said, my own voice barely a breath. Not like this. His gaze was relentless, searching my face for a crack. For the girl from the lab, this is not a common scent. This is a specific ghost. Before I could form a response, a senior partner, a man named Richardson, nervously approached. Etienne, apologies, but the car is ready for the lunch meeting with the investors. We're on a hard out. Etienne didn't look away from me for a long second. The battle in his eyes was visible. The CEO with a schedule, and the man confronting a phantom. The CEO won, but barely. He gave a single, curt nod. Of course. He reached into his inner jacket pocket and produced a crisp, white business card. It was simple, engraved only with his name and a Parisian phone number. No title, no email, a personal card. He held it out to me, not as a CEO to an employee, but as one person to another. My card. Should any further methodological questions arise from today's review? The excuse was flimsy, and we both knew it. I took the card. The cardstock was thick, creamy. Our fingers did not touch. Thank you, Monsieur Lacroix. He held my gaze for a second longer, a silent conversation passing between us in the charged air. I know you. I don't know how, but I know you. Then he turned. The moment shattered, and was swept away by the tide of suits towards the elevator bank. I stood there, alone in the suddenly buzzing office, the card burning a hole in my hand. The silence broke into a cacophony of whispered exclamations and staring eyes. What the hell was that? Mark muttered to Chloe, not even bothering to lower his voice. Did he just give her his card? Chloe hissed back, her voice shrill with disbelief. I ignored them. I started walking back to my desk, my path cutting through the bullpen. Jessica materialized in front of me, blocking my way. Her face was a mask of controlled rage, but her eyes were wild. What did you say to him? She demanded, her voice a low, venomous whisper. What little game are you playing? Maya, trying to make me look bad? To suck up to the CEO? I stopped, meeting her glare. The only thing that made you look bad, Jessica, was your presentation. It was all frosting, no cake. He noticed. My only game was knowing the recipe. She stepped closer, invading my space. I could smell the faint, clean scent of her unscented moisturizer. You think you're clever? You're a nobody. He was just being polite. European charm. Don't for a second think it meant anything. I didn't flinch. He asked me about Granger causality tests. Jessica, how's your charm with time series data? I stepped around her, leaving her seething. At my desk, I placed the white card carefully next to my keyboard. It was a nuclear device on the cheap laminate. I was trying to steady my breathing when Brad appeared. He'd lost his jovial mask. He looked pale, anxious. My office. Now, it was not a request. I followed him in. He shut the door and whirled around. What is going on? Maya, he asked, his voice tight. Did you know him? From before? Did you set this up? Set what up, Brad? I asked, genuinely curious about his paranoia. This performance. The French summary? The whispering in the hallway? He ran a hand through his hair. Jessica is furious, humiliated. Do you have any idea what you've done? I provided accurate data when asked by the global CEO. I said, my voice flat, you removed me from the presentation. He reinstituted me. Take it up with him. Don't get cute with me. He snapped, slamming a hand on his desk. This isn't about data. He gave you his personal card. CEOs don't do that. Who are you to him? The question hung in the air. I could have told him. I could have said, I'm the woman who taught him that scent is memory, and then became a memory he paid to forget. Instead, I said, I'm Maya Chen, strategic analyst. He had a question about my analysis. That's all you need to know. Brad, or would you like me to ask him to clarify our relationship for you? The threat, subtle but clear, struck home. Brad's bluster deflated, replaced by a cold, calculating fear. He was afraid of me now, afraid of whatever connection he'd just witnessed. Just tread carefully. Maya, he said, his tone shifting to one of strained warning. This is a small world. Reputations are fragile. Don't let a moment of attention go to your head. I left his office. The rest of the day passed in a surreal haze. I was a celebrity and a pariah. People looked at me with new eyes, some curious, most resentful. The story of the card was already spreading in hushed tones. At 5:30 p.m., as I was packing up, my desk phone rang, a blocked internal extension. Maya Chen, Mademoiselle Chen. The voice was female, older, with a soft French accent. This is Claudette Moreau, M. LaCroix's executive assistant. I hope I am not disturbing you. My grip tightened on the receiver. Not at all. Madame Moreau, M. LaCroix has a very tight schedule. As you saw, however, he was most impressed with the precision of your work today. He has asked me to inquire if you would be available for a brief, informal dinner this evening to discuss the finer points of the transatlantic data synthesis approach. Purely professional, Of course. He suggests Le Paraquet Vert at 8 o'clock. Do you know it? I did. An intimate, fiercely private French bistro in the West Village. The kind of place with no sign, where reservations were made a month in advance, or by being Etienne Lacroix. The ghost of ephemeria at my wrists seemed to pulse. This was the precipice, a professional dinner with the man who broke my heart and launched my career in the same devastating act. The man who had just, inadvertently, handed me a weapon to dismantle the people who'd made my life hell. I thought of Jessica's fury, Brad's fear, the cold weight of the white card in my bag. I thought of the sun in Grasse and the silence that followed. Madame Moreau, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Please tell M. Lacroix that I would be pleased to join him. Le Perroquet Vert, at 8. Très bien, she said. A car will be sent for you at 7:45. The driver will have your name. Bonne soirée, Mademoiselle Chin. I hung up the phone and looked at the unmarked bottle on my desk. Éphémère. The ghost had not only been seen, it had been summoned. The hunter had entered the game, and now he wanted a private audience with the ghost he'd thought he'd buried. The car was a silent, black sedan. The driver, a man in a cap who nodded but did not speak, held the door open for me. I slid into the leather-scented interior, my simple black dress feeling both like armor and a costume. I'd applied ephemerias I had that morning, that a secret, a whisper on my skin. This wasn't a battle for the office anymore. This was something older, more dangerous. Le Paraquet Vert was exactly as I'd heard. A discreet green door in a brownstone. No sign. The driver simply stopped. And the door was opened from within by a maitre d' who knew my name without asking. Mademoiselle Chin. Right this way. M. Lacroix is awaiting you. The interior was all darkwood, low light, and the murmur of a few quiet conversations. It felt like a different century. And there, in a secluded booth at the back, sat Etienne Lacroix. He'd shed his suit jacket and tie. The open collar of his white shirt and the single glass of amber liquid in front of him made him look less like a CEO and more like a man keeping a vigil. He stood as I approached. Maya, he said, not Mademoiselle Chin. Just Maya. His voice was quiet, stripped of its boardroom resonance. It was the voice from the lab. Etienne, I replied, the name feeling foreign and familiar on my tongue. We did not shake hands. The formality of the office was gone, leaving a chasm of years and unsaid things. He gestured for me to sit. A waiter appeared and vanished, leaving a glass of mineral water for me. We were, effectively, alone. For a long moment, he just looked at me, his gaze traveling over my face as if memorizing the changes. The silence was not uncomfortable. It was heavy, loaded with the weight of everything we hadn't said 5 years ago. You disappeared, he finally said, his voice rough. It wasn't an accusation. It was a statement of fact, tinged with a pain that surprised me. You left, I countered, my tone flat, and then a lawyer called, with a transaction. It seemed a clear enough message. He flinched, a real, physical recoil. He looked down at his glass, swirling the liquid. The money, that was not for me. It was for my father, a preemptive strike, to protect the family from what he saw as a distraction, a liability. He looked up, his eyes blazing with a sudden, fierce intensity. I did not know. Maya, not until weeks later. I was in a hospital room, then in boardrooms, trying to stop everything from collapsing. By the time I got to Grasse, you were gone. The patron said you sold the formula and left. No forwarding address. It was as if you had been erased. I listened, my heart a block of ice in my chest. The story was plausible. The cold, efficient intervention reeked of old money patriarchy. But plausible wasn't the same as absolving. You didn't call. You didn't write. I tried. The words burst from him, low and vehement. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. My phone was monitored, my emails filtered. My father was dying, but his will was iron. He had people ensuring his heir was focused on the right priorities, one of which was marrying Celine de Villiers. He spat the name, a merger with a name. It lasted 11 months. It was a business arrangement in a cathedral. I ended it the moment the share prices stabilized and I had control. The pieces clicked into a terrible, coherent picture. The trapped prince, the paid-off commoner. It was a cliché, a heartbreaking, infuriating cliché. And the note? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. You could have left a note with the florist, the postman, anyone. His face fell. Genuine anguish there. I was arrogant, and I was a coward. I thought I had time. I thought you would know that what we had was. He gestured helplessly. Réel. Real. I thought a week was nothing. I was a fool. The raw admission hung between us. I took a sip of water, the cold liquid doing nothing to thaw the ice inside me. So you became the CEO, and I became a strategist in New York. We both got what we wanted. In a way. Is that what you wanted? He asked, his gaze piercing. To bury that genius, that nose, in spreadsheets and PowerPoints? That genius bought my ticket out. I said, sharply, the formula you helped create paid for my degree. My apartment. This life. The life where people like Jessica Thorne smell old library and wet herbs and think it's an insult. I couldn't keep the bitterness out. His eyes darkened at the name. Today, in the office. That was for you? The sent memo? I gave a short, humorless laugh. Of course it was for me. I don't play well with others. Etienne, I don't go to their parties. I do the work they take credit for. My distinctive scent was an easy hook for them to hang their pettiness on. Brad, the director, is sleeping with Jessica. He lets her run the show. My only crime was being better at the actual job. He was silent, processing. The CEO in him was analyzing a toxic corporate culture. The man was seeing the target that had been on my back. And the man, Brad, he sanctioned this. He sent the memo. He exiled me to the logistics team today. He told me to play along or my career here was over. I met his eyes. So you see, your informal dinner isn't just a reunion. It's a weapon. They saw you give me your card. They saw you ask me to walk with you. By tomorrow, I'll either be untouchable or I'll be out of a job because their fear will turn to outright destruction. They will not touch you, he said, and the quiet certainty in his voice was more frightening than any shout. It was the sound of absolute power. What happened today, the insufficiency of the presentation, the attempted suppression of substantive work. It is a management failure. His failure, he was already reframing it, moving the pieces on the board. My personal war was becoming a corporate governance issue. It was smart. It was cold. It was also a deflection. This isn't about you cleaning house in New York. Etienne, I said, leaning forward. The faint, secret cloud of ephemera between us seemed to intensify. This is about you and me, in a room, 5 years too late. He held my gaze, and the corporate veil vanished again. The pain and the longing were right there, raw and exposed. I know, he murmured. When I walked into that room today, I was bored, annoyed. Another regional office, another polished show. And then, I saw you, a shadow at the back, and I felt a dislocation. And then, you spoke, and the data was sharp, brilliant. And then, he inhaled, slowly, his eyes closing for a second. Then I caught the ghost, éphémère, here, in this sterile New York room. I thought I had imagined it, a memory triggered by stress, but it grew stronger. And when you stood beside me, it was unmistakable. It was you. He opened his eyes. You kept it. I kept the ghost. I corrected. I buried the girl. The girl, he said, reaching out slowly, hesitantly, across the table. He didn't touch me. His hand hovered over my wrist, where the scent would be closest. The girl was the most real thing I have ever known. The CEO, that is the ghost I inhabit. The waiter arrived with food. Breaking the spell, we ate. The conversation shifting to safer, but still charged, topics, that the intricacies of the Lumini data, the state of the European market, the clumsy attempts at synergy between the New York and Paris offices. It was a dance, a feeling out. The shared history was a third presence at the table, silent and immense, over a bitter espresso. He finally asked, "What do you want?" "Maya, now, tonight, from Stratica, from this." He gestured between us. I put my cup down. I want the work to be enough. I want to not have to pretend to be someone I'm not to succeed. I don't want a promotion handed to me because of this. I gestured back at him. I earned the Caldwell account. I built the Lumini analysis. That should be what matters. He nodded, respect in his eyes. And it will be. But you must understand, exposing the incompetence and the malice, it will have consequences. It will look like you have my favor. Because you will. Not because of Grass. Because you are the only person in that office who seems to understand that strategy is built on rock, not sand. And us? I asked. The question I'd been dreading and longing to ask. He looked away, out at the dark restaurant. There is no us to go back to, he said, his voice thick. That is ashes. I know this. But the scent, the ghost, it tells me the embers might still be warm. I have no right to ask for anything. But I am asking for a chance, not to rewind, but to see what, if anything, might be built from the ashes. As colleagues, perhaps, as people who share a ghost. It was honest. It was more than I expected. The boy who had run was gone. In his place was a man who had shouldered a world and found it hollow, haunted by the smell of something real he'd been forced to abandon. I don't know if I can do that, I said truthfully. The hurt was a deep, old bruise. I am not asking you to know now, he said. I am only asking you not to disappear again, and to let me rectify the professional environment that has allowed you to be treated this way. As your CEO, let me do that much. The car ride back to my apartment was silent. He didn't try to come up. He simply said, "The car will be here for you in the morning. Good night, Maya. Good night, Etienne." I entered my empty apartment. The dinner hadn't provided closure. It had ripped open the old wound and shown me that the scar tissue was more complex than I'd thought. He wasn't the villain of my story. He was a co-actor in a tragedy written by his father. The knowledge didn't heal the hurt, but it changed its shape. The next morning, I dressed with care. I applied AP Hamer, and no longer a secret, but a declaration. The black sedan was indeed downstairs. When I walked into the Stratica office at 8:15 a.m., the energy was electric and toxic. People stared, then quickly looked away. Whispers trailed me like smoke. I went straight to my desk. At 9 a.m. sharp, an all-hands email from Brad's assistant summoned the entire New York staff to the main conference room. Immediately, we filed in. Brad stood at the front, but he looked shrunken. Jessica was to his right, her face a carefully applied mask of calm, but her eyes were red-rimmed. The fear in the room was palpable. Brad cleared his throat. "Team, thank you for gathering on short notice. As you know, LaCroix's review provided invaluable perspective." He swallowed. Stratica Global is built on a foundation of excellence, integrity, and respect. It has come to light that some of our local practices may not have been fully aligned with these global principles. He was reading from a prepared statement, his voice monotone. Effective immediately, I am announcing a restructuring of the strategy team's leadership. He couldn't look at Jessica. Jessica Thorne is stepping away from her client-facing and team lead responsibilities to pursue other opportunities. We thank her for her contributions. A gasp went through the room. Stepping away. It was a firing, wrapped in corporate gauze. Jessica's mask cracked. A single tear tracked through her foundation. She didn't move. Furthermore, Brad continued, his voice gaining a hint of desperate strength. It is clear we must better integrate our deep analytical capabilities with our client strategy. To that end, Maya Chen is being promoted to the newly created role of Director of Strategic Insights, reporting directly to me. She will oversee all analytical output and serve as a direct liaison to Global on data integrity and methodological rigor. The silence that followed was absolute. Stunned, I kept my face neutral, but inside, a fierce, cold satisfaction bloomed. It was a promotion born of nuclear fallout, but it was mine. The work had finally spoken, through the most powerful, reluctant megaphone imaginable. Brad droned on about new collaboration protocols, but no one was listening. All eyes were on me, and on Jessica's crumbling form. After the meeting, as people shuffled out in hushed shock, Jessica walked up to me. The venom was gone, replaced by a hollow, devastated rage. "You bitch," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You scheming, smug bitch. You slept with him, didn't you? That's the only way." A little backroom favor for the new director. I looked at her, this woman who had built her kingdom on sand and spite. "No, Jessica," I said, my voice quiet and clear. I just knew the data, and he could smell the difference between substance and bullshit. "Maybe you should have spent less time worrying about my perfume and more time learning the business." She recoiled as if slapped, turned on her heel, and walked away, her career in ashes. Brad approached me, his smile pained. "Maya, congratulations. My door is always open. This is a new start for all of us." I simply nodded. His door meant nothing to me now. I returned to my desk. There was a single, creamy envelope placed neatly on my keyboard. No stamp, hand-delivered. I opened it. Inside, on thick, plain stationery, was a handwritten note in dark blue ink. "M. The necessary surgery is done. The patient will recover, albeit with less poison in its system. The offer for Paris stands, not as a favor, as a recognition that a mind like yours is wasted in a place that needed a scare to appreciate it. The special advisor role would give you a global platform, resources, and, I hope, a more intellectually honest environment. But I understand if New York is your battlefield now, the director role is yours. Unimpeachably, the report to Global will reflect that your promotion was recommended based on the exceptional quality of your work, specifically cited in the Lumini and Caldwell reviews. I will be in Paris. The ghost, it seems, is now permanently in New York. Should you ever wish to discuss causality or anything else, you have the number. .E. I folded the note and placed it in my bag, next to the white business card. The hunter had entered, changed the entire ecosystem, and then retreated. He had given me back my career, on my terms, and then stepped aside. I looked at the unmarked bottle on my desk. Éphémère, no longer just a ghost of the past. It was now a scent of victory, complex and bittersweet. The war in the New York office was over, but the quiet, unresolved ache in my chest told me a different, older war had just entered a fragile, uncertain ceasefire. The promotion email from HR was a dry, legalistic thing, but it landed in the company-wide inbox with the force of a grenade. Director of Strategic Insights, reporting to Brad Simmons, effective immediately. My inbox, which had been a tomb of silence or petty requests for a year, began to chime with a steady stream of messages. Some were terse congratulations from peers. Most were deferential requests for guidance or alignment on projects from people who had watched Jessica's fall. The power dynamic had flipped overnight, and the scent of fear in the office had shifted from mine to theirs. Jessica was gone by lunchtime. She cleared her desk with a cold, silent efficiency, refusing to look at anyone. Chloe and Mark became phantoms, scurrying from meeting to meeting with their heads down. Brad, my new direct report, scheduled a one-on-one that afternoon. He transformed. The bluster, the casual dominance, was gone. In its place was a sweaty, obsequious anxiety. Maya, welcome. Really, just welcome, he said, gesturing too broadly to the chair opposite his desk. The Director of Strategic Insights. It's a pivotal role. Global is very focused on data integrity. As you know, Etienne.M. Lacroix that was very clear. Was he? I asked, taking a seat, crossing my legs. I let the silence stretch. Brad wiped a hand over his brow. Absolutely. He left very specific feedback about the New York office's culture, about valuing substance. He mentioned your work on Caldwell and Lumini by name several times. He was trying to gauge my reaction, to see how much I knew, how much I had orchestrated. The circumstances with Jessica, that was an internal HR matter. Of course, but Lacroix's visit certainly accelerated the timeline for a performance review. I see, I said, my voice neutral. And my priorities in this new role? Yours to set, he said, too quickly, within reason. Of course. I was thinking you could do a full audit of our analytical methodologies across all active client engagements. Root out any inconsistencies. He was offering me a whip and asking me to name the backs it would lash. He was terrified. A methodology audit is a good start. I agreed. I'll also be reviewing all project staffing and credit assignments from the last fiscal year. For clarity, his face paled. He knew what that would uncover, a trail of my work funnel to Jessica's credits. Of course, transparency is key. It is, I said, standing. I'll have a plan on your desk by end of day tomorrow. Brad. I used his first name deliberately, a reminder of the new hierarchy. He flinched, just slightly, looking forward to it. Maya, the real firestorm, however, was still gathering. 2 days after the promotion, Claudette Moreau called again. Mademoiselle Chin, Lacroix has asked me to schedule a video conference for you both with Henri Bisset of Bisset ETC in Paris. Tomorrow, 11 a.m. your time. Bisset is a connoisseur, a private client of Lacroix. He has a question about a certain vintage fragrance acquisition. Lacroix insisted only you would have the insight he requires. A private client, a vintage fragrance. This had nothing to do with Stratica. This was about Ephemere. My stomach tightened, but I agreed. The next day, I took the call in a small, glass-walled phone room. Etienne's face appeared on the screen, looking more tired than he had in New York, but his eyes were alert. Beside him, in a split-screen view, was an elderly, sharp-eyed man with a shock of white hair, Henri Bisset. Bisset, may I present Maya Chin, our new Director of Strategic Insights in New York, and the person I told you about. Maya, this is Henri Bisset. He is considering an acquisition for his collection. Mademoiselle Chin, Bisset said, his English precise. Etienne tells me you have a remarkable nose, and a particular knowledge of a certain lost composition from Grasse, circa 5 years ago, an anonymous work. Éphémère. I kept my expression professionally polite. I'm familiar with the composition. Bisset. It has a certain reputation in niche circles. Reputation? Bisset scoffed, but his eyes were alight with passion. It is a masterpiece, a ghost. As they say, I have smelled it only once, on a blotter a broker had. I have been trying to track down the creator for years. The broker is silent as a tomb. But Etienne, he calls me yesterday, and he says, Henri, I believe I have found your ghost maker, and she works for me, of all places. Is this true? I shot a look at Etienne on the screen. He gave a barely perceptible shrug, a faint, apologetic smile on his lips. He had thrown me into the deep end. Lacroix may be overstating my role. I said carefully. Nonsense, Bisset exclaimed. He says you wear it. The real thing, not the diluted, resold oil, buse trop éphémère, the one with the correct, devastating ratio of birch tar to labdanum. the one that smells like memory and regret. Is this true? There was no point in lying. The scent was on me. Even now, I wear a personal composition that shares those notes. Yes, Bissett leaned closer to his camera, his face filling the screen. Mademoiselle, I must know. The dry down, the base. Many try to replicate the mossy, earthy depth, but they use synthetic oak moss replacers. It smells flat, dead. The original, it has a living, damp quality, a cold warmth. How is it achieved? A particular fraction of real oak moss absolute? A touch of castoreum? He was a true expert. He was speaking the language of the inner sanctum. I felt a traitorous thrill. A part of me I had locked away, stirring at the technical challenge. I glanced at Etienne. He was watching me, a silent spectator to my unmasking. Real tree moss, from the Balkans, extracted with a modified enfleurage to preserve the green. Damp facets. I heard myself say, the perfumer's jargon coming back as naturally as breathing, and a minuscule 0.05% infusion of aged castoreum, not for the animalic note, but for the leathery, smoky undertone that binds the moss to the birch tar. It's the binder. Bissett stared, open-mouthed. Then he let out a gust of laughter. Yes, yes, that is it. The binder. No one has ever identified that. He turned to Etienne. You were right. She is the one. There is no question. He looked back at me, his expression turning fiercely earnest. Mademoiselle Chin, I must have a bottle. Not the one you wear. A new one. From your hand. Name your price. 20,000 euros? 30? The numbers hung in the digital air. On the screen, Etienne's expression was unreadable. The composition isn't for sale. And Bissett, I said, my voice firm. It's personal. Everything is for sale. He cried, though not unkindly, but I understand. An artist protects her ghost. Then, a consultation. Help me authenticate a batch of vintage Somali myrrh. I will pay you 5,000 euros for the day. Your expertise is undeniable. Maya is a valued executive at Stratica. Henri, Etienne cut in smoothly, a hint of steel in his voice. Her consultancy fees are significantly higher, and her time is allocated to strategic projects. He was defending my new identity, even as he had just exploded my old one. Bissett waved a dismissive hand. Pa, corporate strategy. This is art. But fine, fine. Etienne, you are a possessive bastard. Mademoiselle Chin, the offer stands. If you ever tire of spreadsheets, call me. The call ended with Bissett's enthusiastic goodbyes. Etienne's face remained, filling my screen. The room was quiet. You set that up. I said, my voice flat. I did. He admitted. I needed you to hear it. From someone else. The value, the recognition, not as a corporate asset, but as the creator you are. Henri Bissett is one of the most respected noses in Europe. He does not offer 30,000 euros for a bottle of perfume lightly. Why? I asked, the word torn from me. Why now? Why drag that part of me back into the light? Because it is a part of you, he said, his gaze intense. It is not a ghost to be ashamed of. It is a crown you buried. Jessica and her ilk smelled a king and called a beggar. I wanted you to hear a king call you a queen. His words resonated in the silent phone room. The validation was a potent, dangerous drug. The office is talking. I said, changing the subject. My mind reeling. About the promotion. About why. Let them talk, he said, a shadow of his old arrogance returning. But they will have the facts. Today. I didn't understand what he meant until the 4 p.m. all-hands email arrived. The sender was Etienne Lacroix, Global CEO. The subject, a note on excellence and integrity. The body of the email was concise, brutal, and brilliant. It praised the recent realignment in New York, emphasizing the new Director of Strategic Insights role as critical to Stratica's global data-driven future. It mentioned the Caldwell and Lumini projects as exemplars of deep, rigorous analysis forming the bedrock of client trust. It never mentioned Jessica by name. It didn't have to. Then came the paragraph that shattered the remaining whispers. Stratica's strength lies in the unique talents of its people. Sometimes, those talents transcend the immediate domain of business. I was recently reminded of this when a private collector, an authority in the field of olfactory art, contacted me to express his astonishment upon learning that the creator of a certain legendary, anonymized fragrance, a composition known to connoisseurs and valued in the tens of thousands of euros, IS. In fact, a member of our Stratica team. This individual's creative genius and analytical precision are two sides of the same coin, a testament to the depth of talent we are fortunate to have. It is a powerful reminder to look beyond superficialities and value the substantive excellence each person brings. I look forward to seeing the New York team, under its new structure, achieve great things. Cordially, Etienne Lacroix. He had done it. He had taken the very thing they mocked at the Cent Dot and had it validated by a European kingmaker, then broadcast its worth to the entire company. He had framed my weird perfume as a mark of genius, and their disdain for it as proof of their own superficiality. It was a public flaying disguised as a praise memo. The office erupted in a silent, digital frenzy. I could see it on faces, in the frantic typing in Slack channels. My phone buzzed with a text from a junior analyst I'd barely spoken to. OMG, Maya, that's so cool about the perfume. Another from a peer in finance. Incredible email. Well deserved. On all fronts. Brad appeared at the door of my new, larger office, Jessica's old one, hastily cleared out. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. The email from Global. I saw it. I said, turning my monitor slightly so he could see I was working on a project plan, not basking. Tens of thousands of euros? He whispered, as if saying it too loud might summon a tax auditor. For a descent? For a piece of olfactory art. Brad, I corrected, using Etienne's term. The market for rare, artisanal perfumery is quite specialized, but as M. Lacroix noted, the precision required is not dissimilar to data modeling. I gave him a thin smile. Would you like me to include that analogy in the methodology audit report? He backed out of the doorway, muttering something about a call. The final, karmic blow came the next morning. An internal investigation, quietly accelerated by guidance from global HR, concluded Brad was placed on administrative leave pending a full review of his client billing practices and his romantic relationship with a subordinate, Jessica, which was a violation of company policy. His abrupt, groveling friendship with me had not saved him. The promotion he'd given me was now the coffin nail in his career. The news spread through the gossip mill before HR could even send the memo. That evening, as I was the last one leaving the quiet office, my cell phone rang. A Paris number. Hello, Etienne. You saw the email? His voice was weary but satisfied. The whole office saw it. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. They needed to understand the magnitude of their error, not just in bullying an employee, but in failing to recognize an asset of multifaceted value. He paused. I also owed it to the artist. To finally give her work its proper name, the kindness in his voice, the respect, was more disarming than any declaration of love. The embers, as he'd called them, glowed. What now? I asked, leaning against my desk, looking out at the darkening city. Now, he said, the CEO fading, leaving just a man, hopeful and hesitant. You are the director of strategic insights. You have a team to build, a corrupt little fiefdom to clean up, and a great deal to prove to yourself. Most of all, the offer for Paris remains. The door is open, but I believe you will want to win your war here, on your own terms. First, he understood. He saw the need in me not for rescue, but for conquest. And you? I asked. I will be in Paris. running the company, haunted, less miserably now, by a ghost who is very much alive and currently terrifying middle managers in New York. A faint, real laugh, the first I'd heard from him in years, traveled down the line. When you are ready, if you are ever ready, the ghost and I will be waiting, not for the past, for what might come next. We said our goodbyes. I stood in the empty office, the scent of ephemer, warm amber, cold ash, enduring moss, my only companion. The bullies were gone. The battlefield was mine. The man from my past had become an unlikely ally, not a lover, not yet, but a believer. I picked up my bag and turned off the light. The poor acid smell was now the signature of the most powerful person in the room. The ghost had not just been seen, it had been crowned. And for the first time in 5 years, the future didn't smell of ashes alone. It smelled, faintly, of the green, damp, impossibly fragile scent of something new growing through the ruins. The silence in the New York office in the weeks that followed was of a different quality. It wasn't the heavy, judgmental quiet of before, but the focused, slightly anxious hush of a team being recalibrated. My promotion was no longer a topic of gossip. It was a fact. Brad's administrative leave became a quiet, permanent departure. The official word was a mutual agreement to pursue other opportunities, but the speed of his exit spoke volumes. The throne was empty, and I was the reluctant, unchallenged regent. My first act as director was to call a meeting of the entire strategy team. They filed into the main conference room, the same room where Jessica had held court and where Etienne had changed everything. Chloe and Mark sat in the back, trying to be invisible. I stood at the head of the table, not with Jessica's performative energy, but with a calm stillness. Thank you for coming. I began, my voice even. No greetings, no false cheer. You've seen the emails. Brad is gone. Jessica is gone. I am now the director of strategic insights. This is not a temporary arrangement. I let that sink in, my gaze sweeping the room, meeting a few nervous eyes before they looked away. My mandate from Global is clear. Substance over flash, integrity over politics. And that starts today. I placed a hand on the stack of folders in front of me. And here are revised project charters for every active client engagement. Each one now has a primary analyst, a secondary, and a clear delineation of who is responsible for what. Credit will be assigned based on contribution, documented weekly. There will be no more ambiguity. If you do the work, your name will be on it. If you don't, it won't be. A few people sat up straighter. David, the junior analyst with the good taste in vetiver cologne, leaned forward. Second, I continued. The sent memo is rescinded. Permanently. What you wear, provided it is hygienic and not actively weaponized, is your business. Stratica is paying for your minds, not your conformity to one person's idea of a neutral smell. I didn't look at Chloe, but I saw her flinch from the corner of my eye. However, effective immediately, we have a new policy regarding harassment, bullying, and the sabotage of colleagues' work. It has a zero-tolerance stance, and the reporting structure bypasses local HR, going directly to a global ethics panel. The door for the petty nonsense that has festered here is now shut and locked. The room was utterly silent. I had just dismantled the entire social architecture of their world. My door is open for questions about work, about career paths, about data methodology. I said, my tone softening just a fraction. It is not open for gossip, for alliances, or for complaints about who got a better office. We have a chance to rebuild this department into what it should have been, a place where smart people do excellent work and are recognized for it. The choice to be part of that is yours. The choice to leave is also yours. Any questions? Sophia, a sharp, quiet data scientist I'd always respected, spoke up. The Caldwell Project. It's technically Jessica's, formally. The client relationship is mine, I said. Frank Caldwell has been briefed on the leadership change. Our call is tomorrow at 10. You'll be on it. Sophia, I've seen your work on the supply chain simulations. It's good. I want you to take the lead on the next phase of modeling. Sophia's eyes widened, then hardened with determination. Yes, of course. Thank you. Maya, don't thank me. Prove me right. I looked at the group. That's all. Project charters will be in your inboxes in an hour. The meeting broke. The change was immediate and tangible. The sycophantic energy was gone, replaced by a cautious, purposeful buzz. People started talking about work, not about other people. My own office was a monument to the new order. I'd removed Jessica's garish art and her inspirational quotes. It was now spare, functional, with a single shelf for a few books on quantitative analysis, and, in a small, locked drawer, the bottle of Ephemerian, the creamy white business card. The ghost and the king, both contained, both present. The work was relentless but clean, without the constant drain of political maneuvering. The output of the team improved dramatically. I was a demanding but fair leader. I praised in public, criticized in private, and protected my team's work with a ferocity that surprised even me. The story of the 30,000 euros perfume had become a part of office legend, a strange, unassailable proof of my hidden depths. It granted me a mystique that translated into respect, even from those who might have resented my rapid rise. A month in, a large, heavy box arrived from Paris. No return address, but the customs form listed the sender as LaCroix Holdings. Inside, nestled in impeccable packing, was a bottle, not a perfume, a 1978 Chateau Margaux, one of the great vintages. A note, in the same dark blue ink, was tucked beside it. A bottle for a bottle, a different kind of ghost, equally complex, best shared, no professional strings, no expectations, simply a token for winning your first campaign in the new war. I hear remarkable things from New York. The metrics are improving. The silence, I'm told, is the sound of people actually working. The offer for Paris remains. But I watch your conquest from afar with more admiration than you know. I ran my fingers over the label of the priceless wine. It wasn't a romantic gesture. It was a peer's salute. It acknowledged my victory on my terms. I placed the bottle on my shelf, a silent testament to the strange, respectful détente we'd achieved. Weeks turned into months. The New York office was transformed. We were winning pitches based on the brutal clarity of our analysis, not the gloss of our presentations. I'd built a loyal, if occasionally terrified, core team. Chloe and Mark had transferred to other departments, unable to adapt to the new, merit-based climate. One late evening, I was reviewing a final proposal when my phone buzzed. A text from the Paris number. Etienne, a question, not as your CEO, as a man who once knew a remarkable perfumer. If you were to create a new scent now, for the woman you've become, what would its first note be? I stared at the message. It was personal. It was about creation. It was an invitation back into that sacred, shared space, but on entirely new ground. He wasn't asking for the past. He was asking about the present. I thought for a long time. The hum of the server room, the only sound. I thought of cold anger, of resolve, of quiet victories, of the warmth of a team trusting your lead, of the complex, unresolved ache for a man who was both a stranger and the keeper of my oldest ghost. My thumbs hovered over the screen. Then I typed, Maya, not a single note, a chord, frosted vetiver, for the sharp, clean cut of truth, warmed oak, for endurance and structure, and a single drop of orange blossom absolute, not for sweetness, for the stubborn, unexpected hope that persists after the fire. I hit send. The vulnerability of it terrified me. The 3 dots appeared immediately. Then his reply, Etienne, I would call it resurgence. and it would be a masterpiece. A feeling, warm and terrifying, unfolded in my chest. Not a rekindling of an old flame, but the first, green spark of something entirely new, built on the bedrock of all that had been burned and all that had been rebuilt. The following week, the formal offer from Paris arrived via Claudette, special advisor to the CEO. Global strategy integration. The salary was astronomical. The access, unparalleled. It was everything I'd supposedly wanted when I came to Stratica. I scheduled a video call with Etienne. He was in his Paris office, the Eiffel Tower a gray sketch in the window behind him. "You received the package," he said. It wasn't a question. I did. "It's a remarkable opportunity, a testament to your belief in me. It is a testament to your talent." He corrected gently. "The role was designed for you, but I need to know, Maya, not as the CEO. Do you want it?" I looked at him, at the man who had seen the artist and the strategist, who had failed me and then, in his way, fought to give me back my kingdom. I thought of my team in New York, of the system I had just barely begun to fix, of the battle I had won for myself. "No," I said, the word clear and certain. "My work here isn't finished. I built this. I need to see it through. I need to know I can lead, not just clean up." He didn't look surprised. A slow, genuine smile touched his lips, the first full one I'd seen since Grasse. It transformed his face, erasing years of weary authority. "I knew you would say that. The offer has no expiration date. The door does not close. And the other thing?" I asked, my voice softer. "The résurgence?" His smile faded into something more profound, more earnest. "That, too, has no expiration date and requires no title, no office, no corporate structure. It simply requires two people, when the time is right, to see what grows. I am a patient man, Maya. I have learned to be." We ended the call. I felt lighter than I had in years. I had chosen myself, my path, my terms, and for the first time, the future held a promise that wasn't tied to rage, to proof, or to the past. That night, I left the office late. The night air was cool. As I walked towards the subway, a couple brushed past me, arguing good-naturedly about where to get dinner. A waft of the woman's perfume hit me, a generic, sweet, floral department store scent. She'd probably paid $100 for it. I didn't judge her. I just inhaled my own. Private. Complexe sera point éphémère. My ghost. My armor. My history. It was part of me, but it no longer defined me. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Another text. "Etienne, forgot to mention, Henri Bissett is in New York next month. He refuses to believe you won't have dinner with him. He's offering 40,000 euros now. I told him you're immune to bribery." He said, "Everyone has a price." I said, "You have not met Maya Chin." A laugh, sudden and real, bubbled out of me on the crowded New York sidewalk. I typed back, "Maya, tell him my price is a full audit of his Myrrh collection's provenance, and a very good steak." The reply was instant. "Etienne, he'll be delighted. As am I." I put the phone away, a small, steady smile on my face. The winds of renewal were blowing, cold and fresh from the river, scented with petrol and rain and the endless possibility of the city. They carried away the last of the ashes. I was no longer just amber or embers. I was the ground after the fire, fertile and ready for whatever chose to grow next. The ghost was at peace, and the woman was finally, completely, free.